Hey there.
How are you guys doing?
Hanging in there? How about you guys? Ooh, hold on. Let me just fix that. Okay, I think that's a little better.
Okay.
All right.
I'm loving the Halloween 3 Season of the Witch shirt. Keep preaching.
Thank you.
Everyone needs to know that is not a bad movie. Like, people like to pretend like it was.
I feel like has that phase passed now? I feel when we were younger or even 10 years ago, that was the thing, but now I feel it's been reevaluated.
The conventional wisdom has changed.
But I think that we also are kind of living in a bubble too of opinions. And I think that like your average person, like your average, like your guy who was your friend's older brother who watched these movies when they came out in the 70s and 80s is still of the opinion that that's crazy. Why would anyone think Halloween 3 was a good movie? You know, and that's a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that was definitely the conventional thing of, except the third one's weird. And then when you finally see it, you're like, this is amazing. This is like a really great. And even now, it's still ahead of its time, you know, to have done an anthology Halloween thing that everybody else does now with, you know, American Horror Story. I mean, I just, you know, it was such forward thinking. It was really beyond what everybody else was doing. And it's an awesome fucking movie. It really is.
Weirdly, whenever I think about the whole like alternate timelines thing, one of the first things I think about is the timeline where 3 was a huge hit. And that just was what the Halloween series went on being from then on, of like anthology, totally different stories. I kind of want to see what that timeline looked like.
I wish there was something like that now, you know? I don't think there's like an anthology. There isn't even that now. I guess that's TV's thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's become absolutely huge on television. That's for sure. Like anthology television is like a point where when I see critics talking about it, it's like, and the new show, a horror anthology, because there's like 80 of them. I'm like, yay, another horror anthology. I just wish we hadn't lost the beloved Channel Zero.
Yes, that was a blow to me. That's the one show I feel all these other shows ended up on Netflix, and I kind of wish it ended up on Netflix before it had gotten canceled, and I think it would have grown in popularity. I mean, can you imagine if that show was on HBO or Netflix or even, I guess maybe not Hulu, but I think it would have made a difference. But
it was so smart and maybe just a little too abstract for your average viewer. I don't honestly know. I don't know what the final numbers look like for it, because these things often shows aren't canceled so much because nobody's watching them as not enough people are to match the budgets that they have for them, you know?
Yeah, and I think what's starting to be sad is this thing that's happening with say Cobra Kai, which is, you know, YouTube does it as a sort of flagship show to do YouTube Red, and nobody watched it on YouTube, and it folded. Netflix gets it and discovers it, same as they did with Lifetime's You show, and then now everybody says, "Oh, we want more Cobra Kai." That's not a sustainable model. We need to find these before. Otherwise, Netflix wasn't going to make Cobra Kai. It wasn't going to make Channel Zero, and so now, you know, we have to support these things sooner, but we won't get them. That's
maybe some like rich billionaire to go, I'm starting a new streaming network that does nothing but pick up great shows other streaming networks canceled.
Yeah,
not the worst model.
No,
I think sadly, but that's a great one.
I still say all the time, I wish someone would do a show that its premise every week, it's a surprise, and every week as the episode is a pilot for a show that didn't get picked up. And you're just like pulling from the millions of pilots that have been filmed that no one has ever seen. And they're just like, we picked the weirdest, craziest pilots. We picked ones with people who became superstars later, but were in this weird little janky pilot. I saw one the other day with Adam West playing this guy who was a popular television detective, and he's since the show's long since ended and people kind of forgotten about him, but he kind of thinks he is that detective, and he goes around trying to help the police who like solve crimes, and they're just exhausted with him because he's kind of crazy. And I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Didn't get picked up.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting pilots that didn't go anywhere that I think would be.
Yeah, I was just reading about they've done 2 pilots of the LA Confidential series. And they they didn't pick up either of them. The other one was pretty recent too. It seemed like a go project.
Yeah, Walt Goggins was in it and shit. And then what was the other? There was a bunch of really interesting weird pilots that didn't go.
They did another Greatest American Hero.
That's right.
I would have watched that.
And they tried to do a show with Ethan Hawke where he's a person who think it was like right before the kind of Hawks resurgence we're having, but he was a person who gets people or hides people and puts them in hiding or something. I mean, just lots of weird one of a kind pilots that I think, yeah, it'd be great. I think that, it's weird to me that they make pilots and they bury them. For example, Shane Black did a Western for Amazon back when they did the thing where you would pick pilots. Remember that? They had pilot season and we'd all vote on it. And he did it. And I think I watched part of it because I was like, oh shit. And it was like, okay, but I think I was tired or something and it didn't get picked up and now it's just gone. I thought maybe it'd show up on Amazon or, you could just buy the pilot. It seems, why don't they just keep the pilots nope, they buried it. And I don't know if you'll ever be able to see it.
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, that's a little part of Hollywood history that I think would be awesome to be able to go back and look through. There's so many weird ones out there. So, there's a graphic novel series by one of the big name arty ones, like called Global something.
Is that Warren Ellis?
Frequency? Yeah, Warren Ellis's Global Frequency. There's a pilot of that.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, like, whoa, what? That book is weird. I'd love to see what that pilot looked like.
Well, the big one I wanted to see was they actually made a pilot of Brian Michael Bendis's Powers for FX. And it had Jason Patrick and Lucy, I can't remember her name. She's a British actress in it. And it didn't go. And they eventually made the one at PS3 or something made it, or PlayStation made it, I think.
Yeah.
But that one sounded really interesting. The president of FX said, this is the hardest pilot we've ever had to figure out. And they did reshoots and stuff. And I would just always wanted to see it. I wanted to see what they did because I did not like the one they did with Sharlto Copley. I thought that was fucking terrible. So yeah, there's lots of pilots that I think, that'd be really great for somebody to. I'm sure the rights are so fucking complicated for these kind of things. You'll never get that kind of thing, but that'd be a really great thing for someone. Didn't they do a Mr. and Mrs. Smith pilot?
That sounds
yeah.
I remember watching the Aquaman, sort of a spinoff of Smallville, but not really pilot.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, it's fine, but I see why nobody picked it up. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. You're like, okay, this feels like any given first episode of this type of show from that period of time. But I don't know. I'm kind of more interested in the ones that were too odd for the networks to say yes to. Like, what's the really famous one that Ben Stiller produced?
Heat Vision and Jack.
Heat Vision and Jack is so funny. And I can only imagine that world, that parallel timeline where Heat Vision and Jack went huge and there's 6 seasons and a movie and all that.
I mean, I'm kind of glad it didn't because we got Community, but I love Community. That is definitely a thing that would have lasted one season.
That's true.
And never would have. I don't even know if it would have made it a season. That's like, they had the one show with Heather Graham and it was on one night. Oh, and then they canceled it.
That happens. Yeah. There are shows that only get an episode out before they're like, oh shit, we got to cancel that.
And then I think, it's not going to go. I mean, I just know if pilot season is going to start changing. I think now after the writer's strike and then when Hollywood was kind of in trouble after the global collapse, they don't really do pilots the way they used to. No. Now where they make 25 pilots and they pick 10 or whatever.
Well, it seems like a lot of time they're just greenlighting shows to series rather than even going through the pilot thing. They're like, okay, well, all the numbers seem right here and this creator's proven and yada, yada, yada. But now we see so more often, which is unusual, with the original showrunners, creators just bailing after the first season going, yeah, I'm done. Give it to somebody else.
There's some weird shit like that.
I hate that. Anyway, let's get here our regular ritual, which is talking about what are you reading, watching, playing? Mm-hmm. And let's give these guys a chance to go first. Robert Summer.
Yeah.
Name one of the things that you are, in fact, reading, watching.
So the latest thing I guess the most accessible thing that I probably checked out recently was checked out, Russ watched it with me, was Woke, the new show on Hulu. It's a shows with, I'm not sure.
Lamorne Morris.
Yeah. He was on New Girl. And this is a show about how he is an African-American cartoonist in San Francisco, and he draws an innocuous cartoon called Toast and Butter. And then after a kind of wicked run-in with racial profiling, he, against his own will, he becomes woke to the way life kind of is. And then, he struggles with how how things change and inanimate objects begin to speak to him about being woke, trash cans, Sharpie pens. It's not quite as good as I want it to be. It looks great. It's a beautiful looking show. The cast is terrific. They're certainly funny. You got one of the guys from Workaholics as one of his roommates, and they have the girl who starred in iZombie in it.
Oh, I like her.
She's awesome, and she plays his sort of love interest, and she's really terrific. And the best stuff is kind of between them, and they're trying to figure out how they feel about each other. And they have one great episode. It's kind of a bottle episode where all the roommates are trying to hook up or in the process of attempting to hook up, in like about a half hour inside their apartment. And just, it's amusing. And I think it was very watchable. It's only 8 episodes. I think it's about something kind of important, although I wish it was a little more developed. I wish it was a little more funny. It's a little more, okay, it's kind of amusing. But it was definitely entertaining. I liked it.
I liked it more than Rob. I'm a huge Lamorne Morris fan.
He's amazing.
I thought he was so great in New Girl, and I thought when New Girl ended, somebody hand this guy a movie, somebody hand this guy a TV show. So I'm glad somebody put him in there. Unfortunately, he's kind of the straight man, and he's such a good actor. He's good at that. But the other guys, particularly his 2 roommates, get to be a lot funnier than he does.
That's a good point.
So they sort of have tamped down something I think he's really good at. But just good to see him as a lead. I mean, I think you give this guy the right thing, he's going to be huge.
Can I ask you, did you watch all the way to the end of New Girl?
Oh yeah,
we watched every episode. I love New Girl.
So I really liked it. It was just one of those shows that because everything else going on, I just kind of fell off. But I watched the whole first 3 seasons straight through and loved it.
Oh, we've watched the whole show twice.
And I'm watching it again right now, and I will tell you, I think it holds its quality all the way through.
Who did she end up with?
I'm not going to tell you.
Damn it. Okay, so full confession time. Last night I started watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and I mean I started watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I have seen maybe 3 or 4 episodes of it, and even then kind of in the background, never really paying attention. And I think there's like 198 seasons of it, so I have a ways to go. But I liked it right off the bat. I knew I would, right? Even though it's probably its level of like cringy offensiveness is a little dated right now.
Yeah.
But you can see where they're going with it in a way that's definitely not for the purpose of being offensive, Anyway, I thought it was good. But okay, Russ, what you got?
I watched The Vow on HBO, and
was it wow?
I will say I think it's probably a little too long. I don't know that it needs to be as many episodes as it is, but it is an absolutely fascinating story. It's very well told and well edited.
What is it about?
It's about the Nexum cult, and which was a self-help kind of semi mainstream Scientology type thing that eventually turned pretty ugly. I don't want to say too much. You can Google it or watch the show or whatever. But I had followed some Hollywood celebrities. Yeah, it has kind of a bit of a Hollywood tangent. I just as an insight into cult mentality and how that happens, even within privileged, intelligent, very well educated people. I think it lends some insight into a lot.
Yeah,
of what's
I think they do the which I'm starting to realize is the documentary structure, which is it starts at the end and you see, oh wow, something really bad's happened here. The news is like this news is broken and tragedy is struck and blah blah blah.
Right.
And then they jump back and then the people walk you through what happened and you're like, wow, okay, I'm kind of in this. And then the next thing is it starts to get weird. And then eventually they catch up to the present. So that seems to be the structure. But I will say, the beginning when they're talking and stuff, it's very convincing.
If they ever do a documentary about the Trump administration, I can just see them going, where are we supposed to start?
No.
It's unclear what the low point was.
Exactly. So, but I loved it. I got sucked in. I watched 3 hours. I haven't binged anything in months, and I just got sucked in and watched the first 3 that were available right then.
We have people on the site, our critics are going to be reviewing that one. I'm not on that one, but they're all raving about it. Like, oh my God, this thing's so addictive. I'm like, okay.
It is. It doesn't need to be as long, but I still can't stop watching.
Yeah.
Okay. For me right now, and I'm going to switch to, that old school thing people used to do called reading.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Derek, had posted on Facebook how much he loved this book, and he was rereading it for the first time. Now, once again, due to the giant pile of books I got from patients, when I saw this was by Robert M.R. McCammon, who wrote like Swan Song, which was kind of the competitor to The Stand, and I still think maybe a little bit better. Yeah, I said it. But who was another one of those 900-page horror opus writers of his time. I was like, I could have sworn that was in there. I'm going to see if it's there. I'm going to read that next. So I'm reading this, and it's definitely considered to be his magnum opus. And it's odd because, and y'all actually I think might really like this. It's unlike any of the other books I've been reading, which to be fair is entirely Stephen King books, but it's trying to do like that one great summer memory where like all this crazy shit is happening in this one town, and it's all through the eyes of this like 12-year-old kid. But the whole thing is done as sort of like, and that's the summer I got my new bike and we met my best friend. And like every chapter is like a new weird, crazy fucking thing that happened that maybe it happened. Maybe it was in their imagination. And it all has a background story leading through it of their dad seeing a guy who's been chained to a sports car that already dead at this point, who somebody put a brick on the pedal and driven it into the local bottomless lake, like unrecoverably. So He's the only one who saw it, him and his kid. And he's like, I know this happened. And his dad is haunted by this and is literally like having trouble eating and having nightmares. And the kid saw a mysterious figure, but that's like the one running thing that it keeps coming back to. And I'm like halfway through it. It's really good, but it's such an odd structure in that it is all these kind of little stories, but with this background thread running through it. I really do recommend it.
Oh, wow.
Wow. All right. Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of that, I'm reading Rendezvous with Rama, which is Arthur C. Clarke's 1971, I think, book. He wrote 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Childhood's End, and he's obviously one of the most important sci-fi writers of the 20th century. I had always meant to read it because David Fincher was always on his short list of movies to make, and so I always wanted to check it out. And I had read the book on the making of 2001, and so I said, "Yeah, fuck it, I'm just going to read this." It's not even like 400 pages, so I've been reading it a little. It's and I was delighted. I thought it would be a little more ponderous and slow, but it's actually pretty fun. It moves really fast. The ideas are really interesting. So yeah, I liked it. I recommend.
As someone who at one point read all of the Clarke stuff when I was younger, I got super into, at the same time, Clarke and Niven. I was like going back and forth. And they're similar in some ways. Clarke is more interested in philosophy. Yeah. Niven's more interested in hard science. But this and Ringworld were the two that were like, man, I can't decide which one I like better. And they're both sort of about like these Dyson sphere-ish sort of things in space. And Rendezvous with Rama remains my favorite Arthur C. Clarke book.
Okay, great.
Childhood's End is real close, but 2001 is still boring. Sorry.
Okay. Well, so I'm almost done. I think I got about 100 pages. So so it pays off. Did you read the sequels?
I read the first sequel, but so long ago. I've since reread the original and never gone back and reread the sequels. Hey, Dennis is there. Says he finished King Leopold's Ghost. I'm not familiar with that one, but I am familiar with Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson, and I think that is the masterpiece of cyberpunk. Like if you had to point at one cyberpunk novel and say that's the best one, that's the best one.
Wow. Well,
bold words.
It's about to be a TV show.
Of course it is. I'm only surprised it took this long.
Well, yeah. Russ, what about you?
You know what? Honestly, I've been reading a lot of comic books. So I have them here. I finished. I read Rob Williams and Jim Lee's Suicide Squad run, or I started on that, and it's pretty fun.
I've been real curious about that.
Yeah, I picked it up because I follow one of the editors of DC, and he said that they sort of thought of it as what's the biggest comic book version of whatever we're trying to do, and I think that's really in there, and it's been a blast. And then I read, continuing to read Mr. Nick Spencer's run on Spider-Man. I think I'm up to volume 4. He builds a lot of it up to a confrontation with Kraven the Hunter that was pretty awesome.
Yes, it was.
and I love Spencer's style. You know, he has the meta take on superheroes. He has a lot of funny, quippy, clever dialogue, and he has a great deal of affection for these second tier supervillains that he drags up from the past, and they're really interesting. And then I read, and I obviously recommend this if you want to appear super smart, is the Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips, the classic pairing. They did the Fade Out, which is a really great series about a blacklist, or during the blacklist, a screenwriter trying to unravel this murder that he may or may not have been part of. It's really smart, very adult, and obviously one of my favorite eras. And he really deals with, you know, old school Hollywood and that kind of thing. It was great. It was great. And he has another one. I'm going to try. I guess him and Phillips obviously have a bunch of stuff. So
you can pretty much just say, they'll be like, "What's the name of that book you said?" Look, does it say Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips on it? It's good. Get it.
It really is true. Yeah, and those guys, I think, together have such a great style and vision for the kind of stuff that they do, and it really hits into the things that I love. They always bring kind of a noirish element to it, even if they're doing something like Captain America or Daredevil. So yeah, just great.
So I was playing this has just got added to PlayStation Now, which is one of the various services that gives you hundreds of games you can download. And so there's this game called Greedfall. And I always go, there's so many games on that service. You're like, you've never heard of this, right? As a casual gamer, you're like, I have no fucking clue what that is. So I looked this up and got lots of good reviews. And it's like, yeah, it's a full-blown RPG, 3D, not top-down or isometric or anything. It was like, yeah, okay, let's give it a shot. Often these things are super wonky and like buggy, you know. And this is a beautiful looking game, and it's not buggy at all, and it's gigantic. And I'm like, how come no one told me about motherfucking Greedfall? And it's set kind of like fantasy version of like the 1500s, 1600s type, because like there's like the Inquisition and stuff like that going on, and everybody kind of dresses in those styles. And you're going to discover like America, basically. One of like being sent over is like one of many people with colonizing the new continent that everybody calls an island. But there's all these warring groups there. One of which is like the super religious. One of group is sort of like Middle Eastern, but they believe in science and logic and rationality. You can guess which side I'm on. And then all the various island tribes, which are themselves warring with each other. And it's actually really fun so far. I'm like, wow, I still can't believe this was as good as it is, and I've never heard of it.
Wow.
Yeah. So
not a gamer, but that sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a neat different take on the RPG classic scenario. And it seems like 99% of them are either post-apocalyptic future or Dungeons and Dragons.
It's true.
Wow. So in movie stuff, I've been watching, or I watched finally Julie Dash's 1991 film, Daughters of the Dust. This is a film I'd always heard about. It is maybe, I think if I understand correctly, it's the first major studio release from a African-American female director, which is crazy. It took until the 90s to do that, but it did. And this is a really fascinating story about a group of, I didn't even really know this history, so I will profess my utter ignorance of the Gullah tribe, I believe, or people who live, they were slaves who were in this one particular area of South Carolina, and they kept a lot of their traditions and they developed their own language. And so it's about that one family of that, and part of them are trying to move to the mainland, and it's, like a day in their life when they're going to do that. And some of them are going to stay, and it's told in a very dreamlike fashion. I was not really expecting that. And it has a very unusual narrative and a very unusual way of telling it. It's very dreamlike. It's very elliptical. And I just thought it was terrific. I was not really prepared for how good it was.
This isn't my copy of it that you watched, is it?
Sorry?
This isn't my copy of it that you watched, is it?
No. It's on. Thankfully, it's streaming on Criterion Channel right now.
Okay, I know they put this out on Blu-ray about 2 years ago. I'd never heard of it, and I remember looking at it like, Jesus Christ, look at the fucking like pedigree on this thing. It's like, how have I never heard of this? And it's really good. Yeah, it's not for everyone. It's very like you said, it's very ambient. It's very dream-like, but not in a really surreal, fun way. It's a thoughtful, cerebral way, and the photography is just gorgeous.
Yeah, as someone had said, I mean, there's the images in here I've never quite seen in movies before. Certainly just with the diversity of the cast, and I really loved it. I'm very sad Julie Dash has not had a more significant career because she made a very significant film. I'd say probably the biggest modern connection to it is Beyonce references it a bunch in Lemonade. So some of it will look incredibly. I mean, she literally like recreates frames from it.
It's funny. I was watching Lemonade with my wife, which is the only way I would have, because I'm no offense towards Beyonce. I just know nothing about that whole world of pop music, or in general, any pop music that came out after like 1995. No idea. But she's like, you are going to watch Lemonade with me. I think you're going to like it. I'm like, okay, sure. I'll watch whatever you put in front of me. And I loved it. I thought it was great.
Oh yeah. It is a singular artistic achievement.
I had to stop it at one point because I had just watched this movie and gone, holy shit, that's from that movie.
Yeah, it's really terrific. I think the acting can be a little stiff, not consistently, but some. And then I think, maybe the score is a little dated in places. But I thought it was a pretty terrific movie. And I think if you stick with it, it does come together despite its nature. But anyways, it's not for everybody, but I think it's a movie worth seeking out. Russ?
Well, before we go to themes, our theme, which is villains, we'll go with Russ's last pick, which is also something I've been frantically watching every episode of, as I suspect most people I know. And that is
The Boys Season 2. Can you believe it's been like a year since it came out?
It's hard to believe.
Yeah, and I've only watched the first 2 episodes, but I do have to say I didn't think it missed a step. I thought they did a really great job with it. It's just as transgressive and exciting as last season so far, and I love Stormfront is great. So I hope the quality continues.
You have some interesting revelations about Stormfront in your very immediate future then. So.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited.
Did you get to the whale episode?
I have not.
Oh my God. It's that's episode 3 then. No, you will be like laughing and going,
Okay. I'm very excited. Great stuff.
I do. Are you watching this as well, Rob?
Oh yeah, it's really awesome. I think it delivers on everything you want it to deliver on. It's a really terrific show. I think it's a little squishy at times. Not everything always makes sense or holds up to logic, which can be a little frustrating, especially some of the stuff. And I think sometimes stuff takes that, you sort of wonder why they don't go do something a little faster. But I think it's great. All of it is pretty exciting and fun to watch.
Well, let's start talking about our topic, which is the best villains in movies. So for people who want to comment, we're not talking about television villains. We're talking about specifically villains that have been in film.
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody relax. Just want you to go into this. Be polite. The Summers Brothers are going to pick some things. You're going to go like, what is wrong with you? Oh, yeah. But no, I'm just kidding. Actually, I kind of agree.
Go on brand for us.
Yeah, that's about right.
I'm just kidding. So we're going to go with the first pick, which is Noah Cross from Chinatown. I believe it was Russ who said this one.
Oh yes. Oh yeah. That is. I think Noah Cross. Chinatown is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's probably top 5, maybe top 3, and I think it's only gotten more relevant and more amazing as a film. It's incredibly entertaining. I can go on and on about Chinatown for the next hour.
It's classic.
But I think Noah Cross is an amazing villain, and again, probably more relevant to even our times today, because Jake Gittes has a moment where he confronts Noah Cross, and Noah Cross explains himself, and in many ways, he still leaves a little bit of mystery, an incomprehensibility to how evil he is. And he is a person who is beyond morality. He is beyond good and evil in a real way. And I think his idea is to control reality, to control the future, to construct a world that adheres to what he wants to do. And he is able to do that. And Jake Gittes, who is himself an incredibly flawed character, reaches a point where his moral compass just goes off the rails confronting this guy. I just can't say enough about it. It's something I think about in light of the news, probably on a daily basis. I think about Noah Cross and his answers to the questions we have about who he is and why he does what he does.
And he's bound by no law, morality, or.
Can I just say once again the fact that I am not in any way, and neither are the Summers Brothers, giving Roman Polanski and his life and the decisions he made a pass by saying Chinatown is a fucking masterpiece of a movie.
Yeah.
It is, regardless, and is still worth appreciating. There's no explaining why someone would do the things that he did in any way that's not infuriating.
No, Roman Polanski's a person
I
should be
think
in
in
jail.
many ways, not to go down the rabbit hole, but the lesson of Chinatown, that powerful men are not held to account, is evidenced in the life of Roman Polanski.
Yeah. But make no mistake.
So the lesson of Chinatown extends beyond the borders of the film.
Make no mistake, Chinatown is a film that any person who's serious with film really should see at some point. I saw it when I was younger, early 20s, and it didn't really resonate with me. And I was like, okay, I like it, but I don't see what all the fuss is about. Then I saw it again about 10 years ago and went, oh, I see what all the fuss is about. This is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't see that the first time. I don't know. Maybe don't watch it when you're high.
Yeah.
That's advice I can give with the masterpieces.
Yeah.
Our next one that Rob picked, I was going to wait and just sort of regularly threaten, reference it throughout the whole show before we finally showed it at the end.
Okay.
But instead, I just decided to go ahead and do it. And that, of course, is Harry Lime from The Third Man.
Sadly, this is a bit of a spoiler if you haven't seen The Third Man. So
Too late.
But spoiler alert: Harry Lime is the villain of The Third Man. I cannot recommend that film high enough. It's a amazing, one of a kind film. It's probably one of my 10 favorites about a writer who played by the I think closest thing to Tom Hanks of the 40s, Joseph Cotten, who goes to post-war Vienna, which is sort of the Wild West after the war, and he's a pulp. Speaking of Wild West, he's a pulp writer, and his friend Harry Lime is supposed to get him a job, and then when he gets there, Harry Lime has died and has been struck by a car, and he investigates his apparent disappearance. It is a tremendous film, and Harry Lime gives one of the great speeches. Again, I think all great villains have a point of view, and I think we'll continually come back to that. And their point of view is clear and somewhat persuasive. And he gives an amazing speech inside a Ferris wheel about who he is, and that war and strife produced this amazing ages of humanity. And other people had no war and no strife, and they really didn't produce much of anything. And also, he has one of the best entrances of a character I think ever in a movie. But he's a great villain. I think about him when I think about bad guys because you know what, you really like him, and the movie likes him. And in the end, how you feel about him, and I think that how the movie feels about him is very ambiguous. So that's, I think, great villains. If they're just sort of boring bad guys, then they're the bad guy in Passenger 57, and who gives a fuck? So
yeah.
Anyway.
Dennis said that you listen to the Third Man radio plays. We were talking about this before we started recording.
Yeah.
The Mercury Theater with Orson Welles decided to do a series of prequels with Orson Welles playing the character of what happened with Harry Lime before The Third Man. I just found out they existed today. So I was this many years old.
So who did you pick? Who do you have?
Oh, well, my first one is like, compared to y'all's, feels like blindingly obvious, and I feel kind of like Captain Shallow over here for even picking it. But I'm not going to lie, Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs, is one of the most iconic and unforgettable movie villains of all time. Instantly, both terrifying and creepy, and yet you somehow want to be him at the same time. And it was that wrath of that swath of villains where their quality is blinding and intelligence, and you're kind of that smart, but occasionally want to eat people.
Yeah, he's you froze there for a second, Chris.
Really
are we still there?
Remotely. Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, good. Just making sure we're still there. He's
I was like, y'all are just staring at me, and I was like, oh shit. Now they're thinking, I'm really glad we do these remotely. Chris, I'd be that smart if it meant I had to eat the Summers Brothers.
He's, well, I don't know how smart you'd be, but he's a great villain. There's a reason I think he's stuck in everybody's consciousness, and I think he's one of the iconic Scream villains. I have mixed feelings about the movie, but I think he's really great. And I think he exists. I think there's an interesting distinction, which is he's somewhat of the nemesis of the movie. He the villain is really technically the bad guy is Buffalo Bill, but I think that he exists in this really interesting thing where he's sort of the nemesis. He's the bad guy, but he's also part of, he's also sort of the person that draws out the main character. So yeah, he's great. And I think, there's a reason the whole movie can just center on him for 15 minutes as he escapes. And, you're rooting for him. You like him. And I think one of the things that always shocks me is how fast he comes in the movie and how much of his iconic stuff is almost immediate. It isn't like the movie builds to, let you sort of, it's like he shows up, he's fully formed, you understand who he is. And it's like the first 10 minutes you see him is all the stuff you really remember about him. So
Dennis says he prefers Brian Cox's Lecter from, of course, the Michael Mann film Manhunter, which I think is a great movie. And I obviously love Brian Cox in a number of roles, but I wouldn't say his performance holds a candle in memorability to Anthony Hopkins. But I'll say, and I'm blanking on his name right now, the
Matt
guy
Nicholson.
Yes, beats both of them hands down in the television.
Okay, you know what? Chris Cox and I don't agree much, but we agree on that one. I am less a fan of the Hopkins. I think he's kind of silly. He has that terrible pun at the end. It's crazy to me that that's such an iconic line. I think I stated on a previous episode, I actually like him more in the Hannibal movie, but I understand his place in movie history, and I don't think it's not well earned.
Well, the next pick is Russ's, and of all the characters from Star Wars, he went for the Emperor.
That's right, I did. I'd like to just take a moment and try and bring in a little bit of revisionist history right now, and maybe we can all go back and really say that the Star Wars prequels are possibly some of the most prescient political films of the last 25 years. I think they give us a chance to explore the Emperor. Ostensibly, they're about the rise of Vader, but I think the Emperor emerges as a much more fascinating character. And I think Lucas's movies, despite having things that people don't like and being about, at the time we thought, what is this? This is about trade deals and like Senate's voting on stuff, not realizing, of course, that perhaps that might be incredibly important to us in the future. And so I think Palpatine's rise as a religious figure and as a political figure who manipulates people for his own ends. And I have to say, I think that the conversation in the Revenge of the Sith. Sorry, I was blanking there. I think that story about Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious, that conversation he has is stunning. I'm pretty sure Stoppard probably wrote that. I think it is probably one of the best scenes in the entire Star Wars canon. I will now let Chris Cox refute whatever I just said.
I just never found him that effective of a villain for me. I thought he's just kind of generically creepy.
I think that in the original series, I find him to be sort of a cardboard villain. I think he is a much more fleshed out figure in the prequels, and probably one of the more fascinating parts of that.
But that's what I'm saying. Is like all the stuff in the prequels. I'm just like, okay, so you're not even a villain, really. You're I don't know, a young George Herbert Walker Bush, like, and that's just who cares until suddenly he's the Emperor and then he's cartoonish again. I don't know. That's me. I prefer Rob.
I like him.
I prefer Rob's choice for the Star Wars, which was Darth Vader himself.
I mean, sadly,
you can't really leave
this guy
off the list.
Pick this guy out on any villain list. I mean, he's just got to exist. Probably more in the original trilogy than the prequels, but he is an amazing bad guy. I mean, I think that he has an amazing entrance. He's genuinely hypnotic. He's really, and I think that, in The Empire Strikes Back, when he shows up and you realize he's got them, and he tells Luke who he really is, and it devastates. I think it's all been so absorbed and such a part of pop culture. But I think that Darth Vader's his amazing design, the black outfit, the samurai helmet, the way he chokes that guy in the first movie, and he doesn't really interact with the main characters much in the first film. He kind of is on his own. He has but he's there, and when he beats Obi-Wan, I mean, I think it's a really affecting moment where you feel that the bad, the evil parts of life take hold and win, and
your heart drops out of your chest.
And I think that in Empire Strikes Back, I mean, I think the way they build on him, like you only see the back of his head, and then he shows up, and he's got the guys, and I always remember the thing. It really struck me the last time I watched it when they take Luke or Han back in after they've tortured him in Empire, and he says, "They didn't ask me one question." And I don't know. So yeah, he really holds up for me, and I think his journey of redemption is really affecting. It's definitely one of the. I mean, I don't know if it's really as nuanced or elegant as other movies, but it was very affecting to me, and it still stays with me as far as storytelling. So, anyways, Chris, I don't know if you had any.
No. I completely agree with everything you just said. Darth Vader is about as iconic as villains get, and he does indeed have an interesting road to redemption. I certainly think Jedi is a very imperfect film, but the part of it that is relatively well handled is the redemption of Darth Vader. Towards the end there, I really like it, and one of the reasons I hate so much the Return of Palpatine, because I really thought that was such a nice, complete arc. Bringing Palpatine back was just cheap move, man. You're like,
it was a weird go-to. It just didn't. It's funny. I was listening to a really interesting podcast today, and this guy who wrote about Star Wars was talking about the original Return of the Jedi script, and at the actual end of the movie that Lucas was working on in his original draft was that there was sort of a fight with Darth and the Emperor were plotting against each other, and that Luke was trying to get Luke to join him, and then the Emperor kind of gets wise to the fact that Luke's not going to kill Darth, so he turns on him and starts shooting the lightning bolts, and then Ghost Obi-Wan and Ghost Yoda show up and protect them. And so anyways, crazy stuff. But okay, so who else we got on the list?
Well, we were talking about parallel universes of things, and David Lynch's Return of the Jedi.
Oh God,
can you only imagine?
I know. I do. Yeah. No.
All right. So I'm going to go with I'm going back again to another old classic. That is, of course.
Oh, good one.
Yeah, Harry Powell from Night of the Hunter. Super creepy serial killer preacher wandering from town to town. Just mega iconic. The love and hate on his hands alone is like, I didn't even know where that was. I always thought that was from Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? I mean, I didn't know that this was from here till years later. And seeing this movie, wow! Criterion put out a great edition of this. It's one of those that if you're religious and you want your kids to be religious, you probably shouldn't let them watch this movie, because they will be scared of priests for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I'll watch Robert Mitchum in anything. It's one of his Out of the Past is probably my favorite. Robert Mitchum, but this is definitely up there. And for anybody that thinks Robert Mitchum is, kind of just a matinee idol type, he's so great in this movie. And
and the director's only film. He was an actor, and that's the only one he made. But he's a great bad guy. He's very calm, and he's insidious, which I think is a really good trait for all bad guys. He's wormed his way in their lives, and they're sort of powerless to convince, I feel like, other people that he's a threat, which I think is really scary for the kids in the movie. So, it's a great choice. I love that movie, and I love that character.
Russ went to a more modern choice here this time, and certainly one of the iconic performances. Oh, did that? Oh, yeah, it worked. Okay.
Well, that's a bingo.
Yeah, with Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards, a film that I think is a mixed film, but his performance is stunning in it as this character. He went on to play a series of characters that aren't entirely dissimilar from the character, but that's kind of what happens in Hollywood. But he's so good at this type of character that you wanted to see him play this role again.
Yeah.
I don't think as far as a debut, this is one of those things where you see someone really for the first time and they are so electric and he's obviously so well cast and it's one of those things I think with those kind of performances where this person realizes they have the part of a lifetime and they just take it all the way and it really is and he's such a great villain because I think there's almost a very imperceptible glee to what he's doing to manipulating people and that carries through all the way even until the end when you realize he's probably going to get away with it, which of course luckily he doesn't totally get away with it, but I just can't say enough about just the scene alone in the restaurant with Melanie Laurent and the unbearable tension. I think the opening scene obviously is astonishing as well. You just can't say enough about the guy. You see why Tarantino said he wasn't ever going to be able to find an actor who could play that part, and just to pluck that guy out of near obscurity. And I agree. I think Waltz's career post Inglourious Bastards has been, speaking of mixed bags, has been something of a mixed bag as well. But he is an incredible actor.
Yeah, so. His style is hyper enunciation. This is the part that I am playing of the villain in Inglourious Bastards.
I love it.
So Rob went and picked. Well, he kind of cheated and he picked 2, but we'll let it go here. I mean, they're from the same movie, so picking the Terminators, Terminator 1000, Terminator 2000 from Terminator 2. Come on, I mean
technically they're kind of the same thing,
Yeah, I mean,
do I like my iPhone 6? Do I like my iPhone 8? Whatever. Yeah. But I think they serve the same purpose, except. I think that they're such a striking, stunning, one-of-a-kind villain. I think the time travel element and then the idea that, he says that's what he does. That's all he does. And I think, this idea of a villain that has only one purpose, and it is to destroy you utterly. And no one believes that he exists but you is such a nightmare scenario. It's brilliantly done. And then, when you finally, first the vision of him as Schwarzenegger and then when the flesh is torn away, and then at the end when he's all metal, it's such a nightmare. And then to have built on that in the sequel with the second one where he's all liquid, and I think Robert Patrick, that thing where he's chasing the car and you don't know how they're ever going to beat him. He can look like anything. He can't really be hit, with weapons. They're an amazing creation. The Terminators are without a doubt there's a reason we keep going back to those things. And I think a lot of the draw is how good the bad guy is.
Oh, yeah. No question. That movie has so many iconic moments and only one moment in the whole film that I go with the whole, why do you cry? Because Schwarzenegger mysteriously decided to emote all of a sudden in a role that called for zero emoting. And I was like, what are you doing?
I don't know. He's learning. They said he could learn. And
that's fine.
Bastard Chris Cox.
But he emotes it. And you're like, that's fine. You asking the question is fine. But he doesn't go, why do you cry? He goes, why do you cry? And you're like, what are you doing?
That is some nitpicking shit.
That's Chris Cox's specialty, is nitpicking.
It bugged me every time. It'll always bug me. But
so who's next?
Oh, I was going to say, I posted this in the Deliberations of Doom, which we all used to be on Facebook group the other day. But it was from Terminator 2 with him calling the mom, who's, I forget the actress name, but she was Vasquez.
Vasquez, Patricia something.
Ask your mother what her favorite Halloween movie is. Hey, Mom, what's your favorite Halloween movie? The Rob Zombie one. Your parents are dead.
Okay, so what else?
All right, so my next one is, this is my turn, so I'll say mine is controversial, and I've presented this before. People are like, that's not the villain. I'm like, how is Alex not the villain of A Clockwork Orange? He's a sympathetic villain who has a full arc and the whole movie's about him, but he is decidedly a villain, full blown, and is one of the most fascinating and fully fleshed out villains in cinema history. Stanley Kubrick, so it's not wildly surprising that that's the case. Someone who often made movies about villainous characters. I mean, that was the type of stories he liked to tell. Maybe it was because he was kind of a villain himself in real life, but or at least an asshole. But I always go back to some of the most memorable images ever set to celluloid. Like this shot right here is, I mean, it's just unforgettable and sends the chills down your spine at points. Thinking about some of the scenes in this movie that today are even harder to watch than they were when it came out. Like the infamous rape scene is just a study in how to make an audience try to leave a theater.
Yeah, it's a really difficult film. It's certainly, I have a lot of mixed emotions about it, but he's a tremendous creation, I think, of truly awfulness. And I think to I don't know if the movie presents him without judgment, but it certainly allows him a bit more leeway than probably other movies would. He's just the bad guy, period. And I don't know. Yeah. How you feel about the movie is very, very conflicted.
Yeah. I as a giant Kubrick fan, I'm not the biggest Clockwork Orange guy. And I'm happy to say that I think Alex is the villain. And I think he gets everything he deserves. He probably deserves more. So, yeah.
And it is, I have seen people who do not understand that he is the villain.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you are going to.
I have zero sympathy for the guy.
Yeah, you're a proud boy, aren't you?
Yeah, that's really true. Yeah.
So our next one goes back to Russ, and he picked, going back to the Roman Polanski discussion, like, hey man, there are some actors and creators who've done some truly horrible stuff in their lives that we found out about later on. And it's a shame that affects some truly great performances / movies that they've made. I will still say, I think the most I've ever been creeped out by any single villain in movie history, for me personally, is got to be John Doe from Seven. That still just saying his name sends chills down my spine. I found this movie so terrifying. It is the only film in my whole life that I've ever seen that I could not move my legs when it was over. I was sitting there and I just couldn't get up. The credits are rolling and I was like, I could not will myself the energy to move. I was just in shock after watching this movie. And Spacey gives a tremendous performance as this horrific anonymous killer.
And I think, again, like all great villains, has a plan and a point of view that you, to a certain extent, understand. I don't know if you empathize or sympathize with it, but I think John Doe's message about what he thought about society has probably only grown.
And wanting to cut off Gwyneth Paltrow's head.
Wow. But I think that, and I think, as you said, it's Seven is so ingrained in our culture, especially for movie nerds. I think that it's, as Chris pointed out, it's very difficult to separate from the idea of what a gut punch it was. And I think there was that amazing moment as they have him in the field and he says, my plan is coming to fruition, and what I've done will be studied and talked about, and you really have no idea what is going to happen next. You see that van coming down the road, and that lone image is enough to terrify you. And I think it was helpful. I think at the time, Spacey was not a particularly well-known actor.
He had a 1-2 punch that year because Usual Suspects came out as well, where he also played the main villain, although we didn't know till the end.
Yeah.
That was also an incredibly iconic and super memorable performance. Those two films kind of made his career, that and American Beauty.
Yeah, it's a great bad guy because I think the movie really builds to that character. And then when they arrive, you're not disappointed. It feels significant that he's there.
And it's a shock when he arrives because this is not what happens in movies. The villain doesn't just suddenly show up and go, hey, I'm here, take me in. Yeah. And you're like, what movie? What?
I mean, he's really only in about 15 minutes of the movie, probably less.
He's kind of another
unstoppable. Mm-hmm. Well, I think you were used to a certain kind of cop movie. And I think even a serial killer movie. And I think, while he does have that heightened serial killer reality, he's not the most realistic villain. The idea that he had outthought them at every turn, and what he drives those characters to, what he drives Brad Pitt to do. You just didn't see that kind of thing in movies.
Yeah. Oh, and just that moment when you think you can't take anymore, you're just like horrified. And he explains cutting out Gwyneth Paltrow's unborn fetus out of her stomach. And you see Brad Pitt shake and look at him, and the shot that Fincher does where Kevin Spacey goes, "Oh, he didn't know."
Yeah, I don't think he does that. I think he just says that he knew that she begged for her life and the life of the child inside her.
Yeah,
that's all he says.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's him saying that's what he did. And
I don't know if he does that, but okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, I won't debate the finer points, but that's basically he says he tells him that that's what he's lost. It's really awful.
So Rob's choice is another classic, definitely unforgettable killer from film.
Anton
Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. Definitely another career-making performance for this particular actor, who Javier Bardem was known and had been in plenty of stuff before this, but this is when Americans went, "Who is that guy?"
Yeah, he wins the Oscar.
Did he?
Right? Yeah, I think he wins the Oscar.
No, I think it was for. Didn't he win it for See Inside?
No, he wins for this.
Okay.
It's an amazing bad guy. I don't know I have not read the book, so I don't know how much of the character is similar to what Cormac McCarthy wrote, but I think that it's a really, he shows up and he is just an utterly unstoppable agent of chaos. And I don't think there's a better scene in a movie than when he does the thing with the coin and he tells the guy in the store, you're gonna, I'm gonna flip. What's the most you ever lost in a coin toss? And he's like, "Well, I need to know what it's." And he's like, "Everything. You're standing in." And it's just throughout the movie, he's constantly ahead of the curve, and it's very simple how he always gets out of stuff, but he always does. And he's just he's a great bad guy, and he's so methodical and precise, and he's like an element of nature. He's like a predator. And I think they do such a great job with him. And he has they give him the great stuff like the cattle thing with the spring that kills cattle, and he uses it to pop the door open and everything. Just an amazing creation and brilliantly brought to life by Bardem. I don't know who else should have played that. I can't. Yeah, I'm sure there are other people who are up for it, but he's so awesome.
Yeah, I think what I love, and I just rewatched No Country a couple weeks ago, is he I don't even want to qualify him as evil per se, although he does evil things. He just seems like a force of nature personified. He doesn't seem to be doing these things in and of themselves for evil. He just, he sets out on a task and nothing's going to stop him from that task. And he weirdly seems to have a sense of, I don't know, justice, but almost fairness in a weird way, in a sort of Procrustean way of this is it. You choose. He gives people a chance, which is very strange, to almost escape their fate. And he is indeed fate personified.
Yeah, that scene in the convenience store. Wow, that was one of the best scenes that year.
And I have to say, just real quick, having rewatched it, I remember what I thought was, what we don't talk about is how great the other guy is in the scene.
Yeah.
because he should be blown off the screen by Bardem, and he very much holds his own.
It's true.
And so I think they're both two really great actors squaring off. So it's a joy to watch them.
Well, I had so many possible choices I could have picked here. We had a lot more we all could have picked. We were negotiating, even going through our picks here. I think we can say we safely loved every one of them, but this is a definite.
I thought about this guy. Yeah.
Yes.
Not have Norman Stansfield from The Professional in here. This performance by Gary Oldman, one of many incredibly strong performances by Gary Oldman in his career, still stands out among my favorites. I kind of was like, am I going to pick this one? Am I going to pick his character from The Fifth Element? That's such a different type of villain, and that's sort of played for laughs more than anything else, but there's some really interesting things about him as a villain that the director that Busan chooses to do. But here, this guy really is sort of the personification of all corrupt cops, and he's terrifying. in this film. That moment that I, was obviously doing the line from is in the film. You kind of step back like he was yelling at you when you're watching it. Like, Jesus Christ, dude, close talking.
Yeah.
It's one of the best line readings I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
Everybody tries to do it, but no one does it as good as he does.
No, yeah. But who's Gary Oldman? You've seen that meme online where it's like, when you're just gotten finished doing a scene and the director says cut and you go over to the craft service table and you have to think for a minute, holy shit, I've been Gary Oldman this whole time.
Well, I was going to say the other scene in that film is the scene where he confronts Miranda in the bathroom.
Yes.
And it is absolutely just filled with menace. And I think the dialogue is fantastic. What he's saying, and then obviously Oldman's performance. It's funny. He had that really amazing run there in the 90s of playing these great villains like Stansfield and Dracula and Drexel. And this one, I think in particular, is the iconic, for me at least, Gary Oldman villain performance. It is a perfect marriage of character and actor.
Yeah.
And he is obviously not a sympathetic person. He is a truly horrible person, but I think Gary Oldman imbues him with a sense of humanity. He is a very human person. He is not cartoonish in that sense. And he takes up almost the whole movie. I mean, I feel like he casts a shadow over everything that's going on in the film.
I mean, everybody's great in it. It is, for all intents and purposes, was Natalie Portman's debut as a young actress. And what a debut. She went on to be just get cast role after role after role after that up until today. And then, my God, what is his name who plays Leon?
No,
Jean Reno.
Yeah, Jean Reno, who was famous in France, but we didn't give a fuck about who's famous in France. He came over here and made a whole career, basically playing Leon over and over again for the rest of his career. But still, he became a household name almost.
Right.
I mean, it's this and Heat that are his two movies that I think he's memorable in. But I mean, you can't. It's got fucking Pacino and De Niro standing over there. You're gonna have a hard time, no matter who you are, having yourself be seen next to them. But Dennis asked, what's the best Luc Besson film? And I think it's easily The Professional.
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any question. A film that, since we've been putting asterisks next to everything, is problematic in today's...
he's also problematic.
In today's film culture. But certainly the things that are fascinating about it remain.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I believe this was, Russ's choice. And, of course, this is talk about your, avoiding the elephant in the room, talking about one of the greatest screen villains of all time. That, of course, is Hans Gruber.
Yeah, he's just going to be on the top of every list.
I almost didn't put him on the list. I think probably the only person to me who rivals him that we've talked about, at least in film history, is Darth Vader. I don't know how you can pick a villain that is better than Hans Gruber. He is everything that a movie villain should be. And I really do think most really great films, like the iconic films that we think about, are lightning in a bottle. I think something goes a little bit left or a little bit right, and Die Hard's just another 80s action movie that, is okay. But it wasn't. And they found this guy out of nowhere. I think he'd been on stage in the Dangerous Liaisons play.
He had been in a few movies, but nothing that, anybody outside of small theaters going to see in small theaters would have seen. I want to say, wasn't Truly Madly Deeply before this?
No.
Was it not?
I think it was after.
Was it?
Yeah.
After?
So, and I want to say what I've read or heard was that the studio didn't get what, I don't know how you would see the dailies and not think, oh my God, we've got gold here. But they wanted to get rid of him. Lord only knows what a terrible 80s villain it could have been. And I think a testament to how great Hans Gruber is, he's so urbane and sophisticated, and he has all the great speeches and everything. You kind of want him to get away with it. I think if he wasn't so callous about human life, you would think, yeah, screw it. You know, I mean, he does say that the Nakatomi Corporation has a legacy of greed around the globe. I think if you dig deeper, you would see they were probably not blameless and had done some horrible things.
But that was also kind of their cover, right? Was that like,
I think so. So there's all that kind of stuff going on.
That's what makes him an interesting, complicated villain, because A, he plays it likably. B, he kills the yuppie piece of shit asshole character that you keep hoping someone would kill the whole movie. And he is a good foil to Bruce Willis. When those scenes they actually have together, that great scene where Willis doesn't realize who he is, that's movie magic right there. That's
it is all movie. And even his death scene, which I think should, you know, it has the effects which weren't great then, but Alan Rickman's performance is so amazing. It's so amazing. The look on his face, even as he's being dropped, Alan Rickman is just acting his ass off, and just one of those actors, you know, just,
if I'm not mistaken, that look on his face was kind of genuine, that was a thing. Like, no, we're not. They were like, we're not going to drop you yet, and then they did it without telling.
Yeah, the thing I heard was drop him on 3, and they dropped him on 1.
Right.
That's
yeah,
which is great direction.
Yeah.
It's great direction.
Agreed.
So yeah, just Hans Gruber, just an all-time great.
Yeah, can't deny that. Rob picks a very timely one. Not that the movie came out recently, but recently is being re-examined in terms of, was he the villain? And that, of course, is Johnny Lawrence from The Karate Kid. Man, the new show Cobra Kai, where he takes a look back and goes, was he? I mean, yeah, we're only seeing one side of the story here. In fact, they even made a prequel comic book run that takes place during the original Karate Kid, but from his point of view, that shows that other kid was kind of a douchebag.
You know, in the 80s, we were beset with a rash of blonde-haired frat boy-like movie villains, and most of them were played by
Mr. William Zabka.
Yeah, Mr. William Zabka. So he is a great villain. You know, it's funny. Certainly, if you look at the perspective of it, you know, he's kicking it, having a great school year. He's got his girlfriend. He's got his karate thing, and this punk kid from Jersey shows up and starts, you know, making eyes at his girl and all kinds of shit. So certainly there's a thing to be said, but he is a great bad guy. You root against him. He just seems like a guy you want to punch. And then he has that great moment at the end, even now, that really works, where he says, "You're all right, LaRusso," and he gives him the trophy. It's really great. And I will say, I worked in a bar where we showed 80s movies, and whenever we showed this one, this was the movie of all the 80s movies. Everybody would watch the end of it, and the whole bar would stop, watch the end when he got kicked in the face, and cheer. So he's just a good movie villain. You root against him. Zabka completed his trifecta by playing the bad guy in Just One of the Guys, and also, even better, Back to School, which he is terrific in.
And props. I think it's been so great seeing William Zabka's career be revived, and I think he did a great job between Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, embracing his legacy and you know, rising to that occasion. And he's really great in Cobra Kai. He's really good in the show. So I think the movie works because he's a little bit of a mustache twirler. Yeah. I think that he is not the most nuanced villain. He is definitely, you know, the evil blonde bully. But it's fun to go back and realize that he's so good at making you love to hate him.
Yeah.
And I love that Cobra Kai goes, yeah, he was, I mean, more so than the comic book prequel they wrote, but like, it's still like, yeah, he was definitely made some really bad decisions and wasn't a good guy. But let's not forget, even villains are human beings and are capable of growth and change and becoming better people if they want it.
And the Karate Kid, the movie, has that in there. But I think that's why it's such a great movie.
It is, and I think the reason it works is because he's such a good bad guy. Because if he were not a great bad guy, you wouldn't be invested in his turn. So,
Well, I went to Guillermo del Toro and picked the most del Toro-ist villain of all his villains, although to some way they all seem like they're kind of shades of the style of villain, which is the very snaky Captain Vidal from Pan's Labyrinth. Now, I think for him, because this is, I think, unquestionably to me, the best del Toro film. They put this out on 4K. It's one of the films I'm most grateful to have on 4K. It is just beautiful and it's haunting. It's a horrible fable. Like the darkest fucking Grimm's fairy tale original version that never got written. And this guy as his just poison-tongued serpent of a military guy, and God, his arc all the way to the end with that people love to argue about what happened in the end because they don't want to believe the darkest timeline, which is what I think they're pretty sure the movie is saying actually happened. They don't want to believe that's what happened. And I think that's part of what makes this guy so fascinating.
I think it's a great choice. And I as always, I hate to agree with Chris Cox that it is probably Del Toro's best movie, although I certainly love Mimic and Hellboy, the original Hellboy. Again, and I think this keeps coming up, these really great movie villains are sadly all too relevant and timely. And this one is certainly one of those. Yeah,
no kidding. So Russ went and picked, and I admit I was mad because I was like, this is number one on my list. And I was like, Russ,
I apologize.
Hot, I spit at thee. That would be, of course, Ricardo Montalban. And what I would say is the only role I think of him in anymore. I mean, yes, Fantasy Island, but that was just goofy. This is one of the most iconic performances of all time in cinema for me. It's the movie that people go, so what's better, Empire Strikes Back or Wrath of Khan? And I'm sorry, I'm going to be that guy that says Wrath of Khan. I'm sorry,
I think that's fine. I think it's a good argument to make.
I love this movie so much, and I love his performance in it. The tension and the anger and the hatred between him and Shatner is so palpable in their performances. He actually makes Shatner look like he's a good actor in this movie.
Oh, I think that's unfair, but
Shatner's not as terrible
actor. And he's very good in Wrath of Khan.
Shatner is a good actor when he cared enough to be a good actor.
All right, I'll accept that. I'll accept that answer.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Chris. I should have given you that one. I just put it down on my list. I know your Star Trek is your thing. And I think what's crazy is to think that Montalban had been Mr. Rourke, is that his name?
Yeah, Mr. Rourke.
Fantasy Island, and that was sort of at that point what he was known for, and he really did such a great. I totally agree with that.
Very
clever. The movie overall is great, and as I always say about Wrath of Khan, it's not just the best Star Trek movie. It's not just a great sci-fi movie. It's a truly great movie. I would put that movie. You pick your classic, pick your foreign film. I will put that movie against it. It is every bit about all kinds of giant themes and a movie that, you saw as a kid and you really liked. Oh, it was really great. And I think obviously Khan is part of that. But as an adult, you go back and realize, wow, this movie is really about some stuff.
Yeah, it holds up. And especially if you've read Moby Dick since then, and there's very overt references to Moby Dick throughout the film, but there's also talking about a lot of the subtexts in Moby Dick or the subtext here. I think that's really fascinating. Did I tell you about, all right, so our local Mystery Science Theater guys, Master Pancake Theater, for my own website, spill.com, we had them come in when we did a convention and do Wrath of Khan for fun, right? We're like, okay, so they talked over it. And during the big scene, like in the dogfight in the nebula, that's so quiet and so perfect as they're floating past each other without seeing each other with these gorgeous purple clouds with lightning. They're like, I never thought the music was right for this scene. Like, I can feel it coming in the air tonight. And everyone's like, holy shit, they're right. This song fits this scene perfectly. Like, I know, right? Now it's a Michael Mann film. And then, of course, they had timed it perfectly with the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do drum beat from it. And the whole audience did it at once. And it was like one of those moments you're like, that was one of the most fun times I've ever had in a movie theater.
I think my only real problem with it is that it kind of ruined Star Trek for a lot of people because the creators now keep trying to make that again.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that sucked is they, I feel like especially the Abrams movies labor under the problems of that both the first two movies are kind of a remake of Khan.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, Search for Spock and Voyage Home and
Final Frontier.
Not
Final Frontier.
Not Final Frontier. Yeah.
Discovered Country.
Are all awesome. They know how to sort of keep going with what they were doing and not just repeat Wrath of Khan. So
agreed. Anyway. So we're going to, I believe this was Rob's next pick, and that is Hal from 2001. We were speaking of 2001 in the beginning of the show. The evil computer. Are you thinking right now, even as we're doing this, you're like, are you watching me, computer?
Hal is an amazing creation. I think Gene Siskel picked him as his favorite villain, and he said this great thing, and he said, the moment in the movie where you realize, oh no, they've lost Hal. They're fucked. He is the ship and they're in, the space going to Jupiter. What are they going to do? And I think that moment when he reads their lips, when they're in the pod and they have the discussion of, do you think something's wrong with Hal? And Hal's that amazing visual of his eye. And he watches it and then just, open the pod bay doors, Hal, please. And he won't. And I can't, I'm afraid that's something I can't allow to happen. And then when Keir Dalia gets back in and he Hal tries to argue or, tries to plead for, I'm sorry, I'm feeling better. And I think I've thought about it. And then at the end, when he disconnects Hal in that amazing room and how he's, Hal's afraid and he faces the unknown of non-existence, what will happen to him. And then, he asked to sing the song. It's an amazing creation. And I think Hal's voice is, that the guy that got to do it, just really that monotone, somewhat genderless voice is really amazing. And I think it's a really, I don't know. I think he's, he's again, he has a point of view. He does, he understands more than he's letting on, and he's made an opinion about it. And he's decided, he thinks he's doing what's best, which I think is what a lot of these really good villains do, is they're following what they think is the best course. And but I think the idea that how are you going to stop him is so amazing. He's locked you out of the spaceship. So I don't know. There's just nothing like Hal.
And I think we as a society, Hal is such a great representation of our anxiety about computers.
Yeah.
And it is only grown. So we always think of Hal when something goes wrong with our computer or we're being spied on or all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So you talked about with Wrath of Khan, one of the problems was that like so much of the rest of the series or so many other things tried to copy it. I mean, you're right. The Abrams film, especially the world's worst decision to try and remake it in parallel universe world. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking. Not that movie is completely worthless, but there are some scenes in it that are completely fucking worthless. But another film that I think kind of was so great and so many powerful ideas in it that poisoned the well for science fiction films for a while, and everybody wanted their own version of it, was Blade Runner, with, of course, the villain who ended up being more sympathetic in many ways than the hero in the final scene, Roy Batty. Tremendous, and, it's easily the greatest performance by the actor in question, the Hitcher being right up there, but not right up there. So many movies went, we should explore that what makes us human idea, that even today, whenever there's a big high concept science fiction film, you pretty much got to roll a pretty high savings throw against that concept that's not going to be the theme of the film.
Yeah, there's nothing like Roy Batty. An amazing, his death scene is one of the great scenes in movies, and especially one of the great scenes in definitely Ridley Scott's amazing filmography. But Batty's great. They have that great idea that he wants what we all want. He wants more life, and he wants to, know where he came from, and he wants to know who he was meant to be. It's a really powerful character. Plus he's genuinely scary. I mean, they build to him terrorizing Rick Deckard at the end there, and it's just, it's really, breaks his fingers, and but he has that dove, and there's nothing like his death scene, and I think one of the great lines in movies, Tears in Rain. But the whole speech about I've seen things you wouldn't believe, and I think everything that villain encapsulates, because again, we understand what he wants and why he's doing the things that he's doing, which I think as people we rationally would want the same thing. This person built in my death. How do I stop that?
I've never seen a speech that more accurately sums up that idea of how can all these things that have happened to me and my perception of them, my memories of them, just be gone forever.
Yeah.
That's insane to think about. I mean, we avoid actively thinking about it. Like that memory you have of your first kiss, or that time your dad took you to a baseball game, or that fucking the best show you ever saw in your life. Nobody else has those memories. You have that memory, and once you're dead, it's gone forever.
Mm-hmm.
That's really disturbing, and this film explored it in the most eloquent way.
Yeah.
And in a way, I really don't think of Roy Batty as a villain in that way, in that classic sense.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So our next one is back to Russ, and he picked, of course, another great one that I don't think any of us can argue with, which of course is the Joker from The Dark Knight. This also goes into that whole films that poisoned the well. At least
I could not agree more.
Who were like, why can't we make every superhero film like The Dark Knight? Well, because you shouldn't do that.
I couldn't agree more. And obviously this villain, who has, like a lot of these villains that we've talked about, passed on into sort of escaped the bounds of the film that he was in. I think for me personally, I was not the biggest fan of the Burton movies. And so I did not love that Jack Nicholson performance. So to see this performance of the Joker, which was so, just a revelation. But I agree with you. I think I'm ready for a new Joker. I'm ready to see someone else do something with it. Ledger obviously put his stamp on it. And I think this idea that the Joker was this almost teenage sense of anarchy taken all the way to its end was fantastic. There's just nothing else like it. There's nothing else like seeing the Joker on screen in The Dark Knight. He is so unsettling.
He is both completely dissimilar from any other version of the Joker, including the comics version, and at the same time, the most similar to the comics version of the Joker, because like him, we have no idea who he is. He doesn't have a goal. His goal, as near as we can tell, is just to do whatever the fuck he wants to and cause chaos and horror. His whole point is anarchy and fuck it. And that is what makes him fascinating. You can't have but so many villains who are this way. There's a lot of villains who you're like, okay, I guess that's just a generic bad guy. You couldn't be bothered to explore his origins. What makes him interesting is this movie does explore the fact that maybe there's nothing to explore. Maybe some people just want to watch the world burn. Maybe some people are just fucking bad and pure chaos.
And something that ultimately our hero can't deal with.
Yeah.
Is unable to really stop in any real superhero type way. And I honestly, I think I didn't put him on here, but I like Bane too. I think The Dark Knight Rises gets a bad rap, but
and I think Jonathan Nolan, the screenwriter, talked about that he thinks that the Joker just sort of appears on that street corner. That's the way he envisions it. Anyway, it was that, he doesn't have, to argue about who he is and what he wants is to lose what's happening with him. Mm-hmm. And so to him, he is an agent of chaos. It doesn't matter where he comes from. There's no psychologizing who the character is and what he wants. He's an agent of chaos. It doesn't matter. And honestly, he's been the most relevant person for me in the last 4 years that I can think of any film. This idea of a person who creates chaos because chaos is better for them, and that your heroes have to play by rules. And the Joker, I remember thinking at a certain point in the movie, my anxiety was so high the first time I watched it, because I thought, he tells Batman, like, what can you do to me? Like, what do you have that I could possibly want? What are you going to do? You're going to beat me up? Like, he didn't care. And what he really knew was that Batman had to play by rules, and he didn't. He didn't have any rules, and the anxiety of that, and the way that I felt that personally, probably we're living that moment in that, our opponents are perhaps not constrained by rules or ethics or any of that. And to that end, I don't know what you do. And even, and like you said, there is no real stopping him. There's maybe containing him, but there wasn't, he says that to, Michael Caine says that, he says, the guy didn't want anything, he just left the diamonds, and I don't know what you do with a person like that. So I think that idea of the Joker was I think, so, as opposed to this cartoonish, I want $1 million, Gotham City, it was terrifying. And honestly, the number one feeling I feel from him is anxiety, just dread, just what is about to happen that I am utterly unprepared to deal with.
Yeah, because you're someone who just has no fucks at all, doesn't care, just wants to see you unhappy. I just watched Coastal Elites on HBO.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of 5 monologues, and the Bette Midler one, like the rest of it is kind of a mixed bag. I mean, there's the Issa Rae one is fantastic. The Bette Midler one is fantastic, and the rest are kind of hit and miss. But Bette Midler has a bit where she's in a restaurant, the guys get the MAGA hat and everything, and she goes, well, why are you wearing the hat? And he says, because it drives you fucking nuts.
Yeah.
And what do you do with someone like that? And not just someone, 30-40% of the country.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the villains that we've talked about today, there is that otherness, there is that lack of explanation to their side of it, and you will not be able to decipher it.
No, I think appropriately matched up to him is another villain who we never really know why he does what he does, and the movie series, endless series that keeps going, always theorizes about it, but never really comes to a straight answer. It's like, is Michael Myers just evil personified? Is he a crazy person? Is it because he's trying to kill his sister because he's got a family thing going on? I don't know. There's like 8 answers. And ultimately what it comes down to is, of all the iconic horror movie, like monster movie villains of the modern day, from like the 80s on, 70s on, I'd say Michael Myers is the one who best defines all of them. He's couldn't be simpler. He doesn't have all the unnecessary flair. He's not immortal like Jason. He's not making jokes like Freddy Krueger. He just wants to kill, and he cannot be stopped, at least not for long. I've always found him the most interesting, and maybe it's because John Carpenter's score, which he wrote in like apparently 10 minutes, is still one of the most creepy and iconic horror movie scores of all time. The theme to Halloween. Every time I hear it, I go, like, look down the street. Did someone spray paint the leaves orange? Is it False Autumn?
He is one. I mean, honestly, the rest of the sequels are trash, but outside of 3, but the first one. And I think that moment when he just says, he didn't, there was no, he's the boogeyman, and he is the thing that is coming to get you. And in the first movie, he doesn't have a reason. I think the lack of explanation is what gave him this real presence and fear. And then that, he is sort of just a person, but he's a little faster, a little stronger. And, and again, just, a vicious psychopath killer.
I really do you need more than the exposition that Loomis gives you about Michael Myers? I think that is more than enough. That is so wonderful. It's some of the best sort of villain or about a villain monologue ever in a movie, and Pleasance obviously nails it. But I think that idea too, that Loomis has accepted this, that he is a man of science and rationality and explanation, and I think still is, but he has encountered pure evil.
Yeah, it changed his mind.
And there is nothing else to do with it but try and lock it away forever. And that's all he says. We can't do any more than that.
Yeah, I think zombies movies for me are just, the fact that he wants to go into his origins. It completely misunderstands what makes Myers work in the first place.
Agreed.
So I know those movies don't work for me, but I know I was just reading. I don't know if you noticed. Rob Zombie's Halloween is still, I think, the biggest October opening or something like that. Still, it's still one of the biggest openings ever. It's still the undefeated opening champion for whenever it came out.
Because there had been such a big gap between Halloween movies at that point, and he still was one of the most iconic villains, and people were like, oh my God, Halloween's coming back. And so everyone rushed into the theaters only to find out it was Rob Zombie's Halloween.
Oh, they're both so bad. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to do one last one with a picture, and then I'll just read off real quick what we had left on.
Okay.
It's running out of time. This last one was my pick. This may be the only one you guys are like, no, Cox. No, what are you doing?
Oh, I can't wait.
I had to do it. Technically, this is two actors playing this part as the villain in the same movie. Can you guess what it is?
Dr. Evil.
No.
Oh.
Ghostface?
Castor Troy from Face Off. John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, but let's face it, more memorably, Nicolas Cage playing the completely unhinged psychotic villain from Face Off. Later on, John Travolta gets to play him in the movie, and both of these actors, who are known for just chewing all the scenery if they're given a chance, are just let off their leashes and said, go fucking wild. And it is glorious to behold. This film is totally absurd, but in the most pleasant, enjoyable way. It has a lot of scenes I think are genuinely fantastic. There's a scene where they face each other in the mirror, looking at their own reflections, and they're seeing the other person who is actually them. That's a great fucking scene, man. You'll never convince me otherwise. But I could tell by those faces, they're like, whatever, Cox.
No, I fucking love Face Off.
I love Face Off. And in fact, I know that now in 2020, we have this weird Nick Cage fetish, and him as the super over the top guy, and he's giving the Nick Cage performance. I think he's he's one of my favorite actors.
He's terrific in that movie.
And I agree. And I think actually, while he does ham it up as Castor Troy, I think he gives a really subtle, great performance when he plays Sean Archer within him. It's and I think it's obviously it's John Woo's best Hollywood movie,
right?
And in some ways, I think it's a great example of bringing an auteur, a vision to something he doesn't normally do. He really didn't make movies totally like that, but he made that into a very John Woo movie, which I just love. So yeah, I think that was a really cool choice. It's not one I would have thought of off the bat, but I think he's a great villain.
Fuck yeah. John Woo shit.
Yeah.
Well, we'll just read off some of the other choices. Russ also picked Uncle Charlie Newton from Shadow of a Doubt. That was Joseph Cotten, correct?
Yes.
It was, and Hitchcock's reputed personal favorite of his movies.
So I've heard, yes.
Yeah.
And then you picked Elijah Price from Unbreakable, Samuel L. Jackson, and let's say
they called him Mr. Glass.
Yeah, specifically in Unbreakable is my agreement point on that.
Yeah.
I think less effective in Glass, but that's just me. And then Auric Goldfinger, which of course was going to make my short list as well. Although that movie, I'm always like, Goldfinger is the villain, but come on, man, Odd Job is the one I always remember.
Odd Job steals the show.
Yeah.
And then Rob, you picked The Thing from The Thing, of course.
Yeah.
I'll have that in there. And then Alonzo Harris from Training Day, Denzel Washington's. I don't know if it's his best performance. It's one of them.
Yeah.
But it's certainly his most iconic performance.
Yeah. It's a really amazing performance.
Yeah. And then you picked Zodiac, which I thought was an odd choice since you never actually see who it is for sure.
But Zodiac, that's why it's a great villain, because Zodiac ruins everything. He looms at large as an idea even. And so I think that's great.
That's a great movie. I really need to go back and rewatch it. It has been forever, but I genuinely love it. And then you picked Ultron from Avengers 2, which I thought was not the one I would have picked, but hey, that's fine.
He's an awesome bad guy.
Yeah.
That voice and his weird sense of humor.
Yeah, I think Marvel villains are definitely hit or miss. And I didn't love Ultron the first time, but I have grown
Ultron's
to truly.
Awesome.
I'm with Rob. I think Ultron belongs.
Just the first time he shows up, he's all creepy. That's great.
And also just the fact that I think we take this for granted now, but they put fucking Ultron in a movie. I mean, did you ever think you were going to see Ultron in a movie?
I'm not shitting on Ultron. I think he's actually great in that movie. I just think of the 3 or 4, I guess, Avengers films, the next 2, the last 2 are basically the same film. But I would put him last on there's Loki, there's Thanos, and then there's Ultron down here.
I don't know.
Yeah, the Summers Brothers don't dig on Loki that much.
Yeah, Loki's just okay for me.
I love Loki.
Wait, and then my other choice that Chris nixed was what's his name?
Ratza Hugging Bear from Toy Story 3.
He's a great bad guy. He's a total fucking nihilist.
He's a really good bad
guy.
He's
a total fucking nihilist.
And then I picked Thanos from Avengers, of course. I think that actor Josh Brolin really does what I thought was an impossible job. You spent 10 years building up to this fucking villain. How could he possibly reach your expectations? And he nails it. He does a great job.
Everything comes together.
And then I picked Tony Todd as Candyman.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Choice, yeah.
I don't think I appreciated this when it originally came out as much as I should have, but rewatching it, when we did this for Deliberations of Doom, I was like, God damn, this is a smart, nuanced film with a heck of a great performance by Todd and a villain who you can't not feel terrible for. There's a point where you figure out why he's a villain. You go, all right, go ahead and kill everyone.
It's a truly excellent. It's one of the great horror films, I think.
Yeah. And then I picked Annie Wilkes from Misery.
Ooh. Oh,
that's the only female on our list, mind you.
Yeah.
But Kathy Bates. Wow, so memorably plays.
Oh my God, amazing.
Unlike any other villain in any movie. The only
great movie, and she is amazing in it.
Yeah.
The only kind of comparative performance I can think of her character is Dolores Umbridge in Harry Potter and Order of the Phoenix. And even then, I mean, I'm sure she looked at her performance, but come on, Kathy Bates is Annie Wilkes. And by the way, the first season of that Castle Rock show, I thought was a mixed bag at best. The second season, thanks to the actress playing Annie Wilkes, is pretty darn good. I really liked it a lot. So we'll just leave our show this week with Maciek Kerr saying one of the greatest villains is Chris Cox in 2031, Oneofus.net biofilm. He's so diabolical, psychotic, but has that tragic side that, wait, shit, I'm time traveling to the wrong decade. Never mind, ignore what I just wrote. That's right.
I did. Actually, when we were texting today, I said, can I change my favorite villain to Chris Cox?
Well, let's just keep favorite part.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's fine. I really appreciate you guys joining me once again. These guys, two of my favorite people in the whole world. Only with people you consider your best friends can you disagree with this much and laugh. Although this show wasn't a great example of us disagreeing.
No, we largely agreed on a lot.
Yeah, we did really agree on a lot on this one. You guys can check out their films at grandschemeproductions.com. .net. I apologize.
That's okay. Thank you.
Some of their short films, including a few that I worked on as well.
Yeah, that's right. We got a new one. Chris Cox was one of the producers on.
Yeah, but I'm never an actor. You don't want to see that anyway. I could show you those if you films, but nobody wants to see those things. Let's point out, why no Granny from Evil Dead 2? All-time great villain or just a cool moment in a horror film?
I don't think so.
Nurse Ratched was really close.
I thought about her, but I don't know. I don't think of her as a villain in the same.
You know what's really funny when I was thinking about these was some of the people that you thought were villains, and then now that you're older, you think that no, they're actually just regular people who are dealing with a bunch of bullshit. So, for example, the one I was thinking of was Walter Peck from Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And what you realize now is that Walter Peck was completely correct. These guys were running some sort of environmental potential disaster.
They had unlicensed nuclear accelerators on their back.
And all Walter Peck said was, can I see some of this stuff and inspect it? And they instead nearly destroyed New York, and he gets a face full of marshmallow for it.
Or how about Ed Rooney from Ferris Bueller's? The kid's skipping repeatedly.
On that same note, Mr. Hand from Fast Times.
Yeah.
That he was.
Don't be ordering a fucking pizza. People are trying to learn.
You're disrupting these students' class.
Nice. Thanks to Mike McAllister, who's the editor who puts together the final thing on here. He's got a film and a festival at the Los Angeles Liftoff Film Festival. Mercer County, You're on the Air is the name of his short.
Oh yeah, congrats! I have seen the movie and it's pretty dang good. So congrats.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll be back in another week with another episode of Live from the End of the World. Please go So oneofus.net. Consider becoming a subscriber for $2, $5, $10, or $25 a month that all have their extra different bonus things. And we've been doing this site for like 6 years. So there is a lot of bonus shit there. And now we're doubling down with even more bonus stuff, doing videos that are going up every single week of the reviews we're doing that are totally uncut. And believe me, there is embarrassing stuff in there we usually cut out, but you subscribers get to see us making fool of ourselves. Where our Dungeons and Dragons show is finally going to happen, where we're going to offer subscribers a chance to play one of the characters in our campaign for an episode or two, stuff like that. Lots of fun stuff on the way. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you, Summers Brothers. Hey, thanks for watching our video. This is Oneofus.net. Like and subscribe to keep us going. Check out all the rest of the videos we have here on YouTube. Go to Oneofus.net for tens of thousands of audio recording podcasts that we've done reviewing your favorite movies and television shows. And you can even become a subscriber there for yet more stuff, including commentaries for movies and television shows. Join Oneofus.net, support Oneofus.net, like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.